Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 23rd of May, comes to you from London. And we look at the dollar index here rising, just hitting pushing to now touch this cloud more and more, just pulling back a little bit the last couple of days, flattening out, but really this trend that we're seeing on the medium term chart continuing. So dollar strength still a theme. Upside targets, we've got a new downside target not activated. We need new lows, and we may just see a sell-off, but because of this medium-term trend, it's likely to be short-lived, and so the dollar really does still have that strength. We're seeing here euro weakness against the dollar really falling heavily this morning, so that is really showing up in the euro dollar. And if we look at the yen dollar chart, we're seeing the dollar is already falling here. So it shows up quite often in the yen chart, the dollar performance. So dollar is falling back, yen strength. Looking at sterling, sterling is weaker against the dollar, hitting new lows here at the moment. And we've got downside targets, another new downside target to 131. So we're seeing that weaker pound kicking in, and sterling against the euro is actually up quite sharply at the moment this morning, but still relatively weak. And looking at against the Swiss franc, we're seeing sterling pushing lower as well. Against the Aussie dollar, we're sitting at 178, so Aussie dollar isn't performing as strongly this morning, but still a bearish pattern there for sterling. Bitcoin continues to push lower, $7,880. We've got this target of 6,100 hanging over us. We didn't make it through on the medium-term trend, and that is really hanging over us now for Bitcoin. So we're bound to see that just continuing. US stocks still just struggling to make new highs, unlike the European indices. We're seeing here that the S&P was down a third of a percent. The Nasdaq has been particularly weak, down 0.2% overnight, but just really hasn't managed to recover the highs that we saw earlier in the year. So it's significant, really, that we're just not seeing that recovery kicking in US stocks. The same through with the Dow Jones index, and the broader US market is actually looking better than the other indices, having made new highs, but just really not breaking and running. So that is still a concern. Looking at the futures are down 0.3% lower, and the Nasdaq E-mini also pushing quite a bit lower, down 0.5%. So it looks like the US market will open lower, and this struggle is just a bit disconcerting. The FTSE 100 is down this morning, but its trend continuing, having made new highs, and the 250 also pushing higher as well. Looking at the DAX chart, it's down as well, and CAC Quarant, all European markets this morning down about a third of a percent, CAC Quarant down 0.5%. And the Japanese market overnight down 0.75%. So markets really just pulling away. Hang Seng down 1.27%, and the Chinese market down 1.4%. Still a particular area of weakness that concerns us. And the Sensex also just pushing lower below the cloud there. So stock markets generally just not having a great start to the week. And looking at crude oil, Brent crude sitting at 79.02, just really holding these gains. We're back below the $80 mark, but we're really just still holding on to these gains. 4 upside targets on the short-term chart: 5%, 4%, 8%, 5%, all into the low to mid 80s. So it does look like crude can go higher, and WTI also has these multiple upside targets to the mid 70s. So looking very strong indeed. US nat gas up slightly at $2.90. Jumped yesterday, but really still very much in the doldrums. Slow building of a trend here, but really not much volatility there for traders. Looking at gold, gold is sitting at the 290s level. Weak recovery here, just having sort of sideways moved through the cloud. We do have an upside target of 13.17. And the medium and long-term charts still looking relatively bullish. And the same is true of silver, of course. Similar picture as gold are looking a bit more bullish, but the medium and long-term charts not so strong. US 10-year yields pulling back a little bit, but holding the 3% level at 3.03%. But we are now short-term bearish below the cloud. And if we look at the tech stocks, uh, really having seen the US markets off last night, Apple down 1/4%, Amazon was down 1/4% as well. And also just turning bearish short term below the cloud there. Google down 0.9%. So again, we're seeing that relative weakness really showing through in Google, and 0.4% on Facebook. And Microsoft was also down just a smidgen at 0.1%, so not performing as badly. But the tech stocks recovery is not really happening, and that is still a concern. One of the things we highlighted in our the 10 big things about the market. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.